Hi guys, welcome to my channel if you're new. Welcome back if you're one of my subscribers. If you're new, hit that subscribe button. So if you're not familiar with my channel and my 370Z build, I have a Whipple supercharger. It's about to get tuned on ECUTEK. ECUTEK. I always pronounce it wrong, so I apologize. They're sponsoring my tuning. In order to do speed density, there's a TMAP, 4 OMNI TMAP sensor that is needed, and basically I have to replace the stock map sensor that is there, as well as a harness, because the TMAP sensor comes with extra 2 wires that are basically for your temperature. Instead of reading the temperature at your intake, which is hard to see in my car because they're aimed downward, but you have right here your mass airflow sensor right here. 2 of the wires on the passenger side are basically your temperature. Now, your Whipple supercharger kit, if you do go with this route, it does come with a temp sensor that you could wire the 2 wires here into your mass airflow, basically bypassing the stock ones and leading them to this instead, which would require cutting those wires unless you do a custom harness that'll go from here to your mass airflow. I'm pretty sure the kit does come with it, but I opted not to because of the fact that I am doing something a little different. So if you bear with me here, it's kind of be a tricky process. So if you have a stock 370Z, you're not gonna have to worry about this. This is gonna be so much easier for you to install because you have your intake manifold that is normally here. You see I don't have that. Mine's a little different. My actual intake manifold is below this heat exchanger. This heat exchanger is where all the liquid from the front heat exchanger goes through to cool the engine, or well, cool the air going into the engine. So down here below it is the intake manifold, and that's where all the cold air is going. So that said, back here behind, all the way down below, which is very difficult to see, so I'm going to sit this here, try not to scrape my car up in the process. Give me a second and I'll get the light in here. Just try not to hurt my car in this process. Don't want to scratch anything up. Alright, so down here, it's really hard to see, but all the way underneath that bolt, like there's this bolt right there that you can see. Below that, there's a bolt that sits out, which is really hard to see via the camera. Basically, right here, all the way down, there's a bolt that sticks out. The problem with that is there's not enough space on the back side to use a socket wrench, and the lip of the actual sensor prevents you from putting a regular ratchet on it because the ratchet's too wide. So the first thing I got to do is I need to remove this because it's in the way, so I can get down in there a little bit easier. Also, I definitely would recommend buying maybe some long pliers or a really long grabbing tool that has a light on it, because if you drop a bolt, you're going to need to be able to get it. You don't want that sitting there rattling around in the engine. So I had to buy this and wait for it, and this is what I've been waiting for. It has a 10 AN and an 8 AN, not AN, 10 millimeter and 8 millimeter end, but it sticks out, and that's the thing that I needed. If my camera will focus, so basically that sticks out, that way it'll grab the bolt and there's space. So I just need to get that bolt out and go from there. Alright, so sorry if the lighting is not the greatest. So as you can see the tool, and that way you can kind of see where that is. I'm going to see if I can zoom in. Don't know if I can very easily. The lighting is not the best. So you can see where that sits. you can see where that sits. It's not very easy to get to. It's kind of far down in there. But that gives you an idea of what you need to get to, which is right here. And this allows it to get into that space and turn it, which I can turn it fairly easily. So yeah, it's gonna give me a minute. So first thing I had to do is use that flex ratchet. Then I had to kind of use this to sit there and push on it once it was finger loose until it was almost falling out. And then I used this to pliers to just pull it out. So now I'm going to use these pliers to pull the map sensor. So this is what the sensor looks like. That's the bolt. It's sitting like this. So it sits like this, right? So it's sitting into it right like this. So this sensor, as you can see, this part's pushed into the intake manifold. The screw was holding this. See how there's an edge? So that's why a regular wrench, flex wrench, would not fit on, a regular wrench would not fit on there, and I had to have that specialty wrench. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove that and pop off the harness, and then I have my custom harness that's gonna go in here. So it's gonna take me a minute, so be back at you. Alright, so as you can see, I would highly recommend, if you buy the Whipple supercharger, just buy the 4 OMNI TMAP and harness through Eugene. Even if you don't use the TMAP part, like the temp sensor part, that way you at least have the option and you install it all at once. That way you don't have to go through this headache I'm going through to swap it later. That way you have the option. It's worth the extra $100 to $200 or whatever to do that. I'm not sure on the final exact cost that they're going to be charging for the harness and everything like that, but as you can see, that's it right there. So I pried it out. Now the thing is there's not enough room to really easily do this, so I'm using a pair of pliers to pull this up. Then I need to use a flathead screwdriver, and I'm going to push that in to disconnect it. While I still have this, when I pull it off, I'm going to hold on to this end, that way it doesn't drop down. That way I can go ahead and plug in this side of it. That way I can easily later plug this side in, and then all of this excess goes to the map. I would also recommend buying these. They're cheap. I think the set for like less than 20 bucks. So I got 2 of them, and that way it pads your fender. So yeah, give me a minute, and that's what I'm about to do. So besides this tool, I also got this from Home Depot, really long pliers, because they help. Basically, this is your plug for the TMAP sensor. Sorry for the lighting, it's not the best, but I did, at least for recording. But there's like a little push in right here that pulls this in and out. It was a pain, and it was all the way down in there. See that bolt? Just below that bolt is where the bolt for the sensor is. There's now a hole right there, right in front of my finger, just straight down, where this sensor, this stock sensor, came from. So what's gonna happen is that's the stock plug into my harness. Then my new sensor is gonna plug into there. This is the old one. New one plugs into there. Then all the way over here, the mass airflow, I'm gonna plug one side into the mass airflow, the other side into the harness. So it's all one solid thing. So I'm gonna have to finagle this in a minute and show you the next step. What I want to show you too is, this is the fun. I have to put this in, so I'm gonna plug the plug into it, and then I gotta push this back in without damaging it. That's the hard part, because this is the stock, was sitting like this. See how it has this lip? That's why a regular socket won't fit over it to get this to get the nut in. But this just pushes in straight into the intake manifold. In your stock car, this sits up high. Mine not so much. Now the difference is this one reads a whole heck of a lot faster, way more sensitive, and if you look side by side, lines up the same. However, if you look, see how that has nothing in it? Look at this one. Has that lovely wire to read a lot more information and a lot faster. So I get to plug this in and replace this. You can also see the difference. 3-wire, 4-wire. So, yep, time for the fun to put this back in. I'm going to first connect the harness in here and then slide this down in and push it in using the pliers and go from there. Alright, so there we have it. Everything is all hooked back up. I haven't connected this yet for one reason. So, you look down here, see if I can show you this. Now that everything's hooked up, it might be easier to see. So I have all the hoses hooked back up. So if you look, you have the connection right here that was plugged into the map sensor. Now instead it's into the harness, and then down there, which is like pretty much impossible to see, goes down to where the sensor is down in there. And then this I just kind of hid right now, kind of out of the way, but it's gonna lay right here for now. So what I need to do is I want to verify to make sure that the temperature of the engine is being read from the passenger side and not the driver's side. So apparently if I disconnect this, it's gonna throw, it should throw 2 codes, not one. Yesterday when we were tuning, just playing around with the mass airflow, using the stock sensor instead of the TMAP, we only got 1 code, not 2 when this was disconnected. So I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect one side, start the car, not start it, but like put it in accessory mode and see if there's 2 codes. If there isn't, I'm gonna do the same on the other side and see if there's 2 codes. So I'm gonna test to see which side the engine, the car is actually reading the temperature from, because this is where this is gonna plug into, is the side that it's reading the temperature. So we'll find out in a minute. So I have the key in the ignition because I think the battery on the key is going dead. I got Eugene the man. He is my ECUTEK master tuner. If you, he's having me go ahead on my phone, which I'm going to show you the screen. Hopefully you can see this. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my settings because I normally have it off, just to make sure my Bluetooth is turned on. So as you can see, my Bluetooth is turned on. So now what I do is go into my vehicle apps, and then there's the ECUTEK Connect. So now you don't start the car, but hit the start. Just don't have your foot on the brake, and then push it a second time. You'll see all these lovely gauges pop up. Now, mind you, I disconnected my passenger side mass airflow sensor to test something. So I'm going to my car, initializing the race ROM, and then on the ROM there's this DTC tools. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that, and it's going to pop up, and it shows HVAC ABC, it shows 1 ECM, 1 TCM, 2 DTC, and 1 IPDM error codes right now. So there are the error codes. So Eugene, I've got 1 ECM.
Yeah, the only one you want to look at right now is the ECM, and you want to check to see what kind of code you have in there.
So ECM is P0113, air intake sensor 1, circuit high bank 1.
Okay, so I don't hear that there's a temperature code there, so go ahead and plug that one back in. You can leave the ignition on, plug it in, go plug the sensor in, go back inside the car, clear the codes, have it reread, and you shouldn't see any of those ECM codes. And then go and plug the other sensor.
I'm turning it off and then plugging the sensor in. I just feel.
You can do however way you want, so I don't care.
Yeah, I just feel more safe that way. Hold on. So guys, I'm gonna go ahead and plug the sensor in and make sure there's no codes. Don't put your fake brake foot on the brake. Now I'm gonna go ahead and, should I go clear all codes or back and then clear all codes?
Oh, you can clear the codes and go back and then come in and see codes come up.
Initializing ROM, tool, clear all codes. Let's go ahead and it's clearing all the codes. So now you can see there's no codes on the screen. So then I'm gonna go ahead and turn it off and then turn it back on.
I don't know, Brad. It's kind of up to you. We want to see what happens when you unplug the other master airflow sensor.
Well, I want to make sure that there's no codes when I turn it on.
Okay, verify that and then proceed.
All right, so my car. Let's see what codes are popping up now, if any, with the mass airflow connected. Go to the tools. Okay, so there's no error messages at all popping up. So I'm going to turn it back off and I'm going to go ahead and now disconnect the driver's side mass airflow sensor, which mass airflow on the driver's side is disconnected. I am going to go ahead and go back. If you look, I'm going to go to my car. Hope you can see that, my car. Then when that pops up, which takes a minute, there's this DTC tool right here. So I'm going to click that. And no errors. There's no errors at all.
Try reading it again. You should get a code. I mean, you got a sensor unplugged.
Let me turn it off. Yeah, it's definitely disconnected. Let me double check. I didn't pull that off, unless I'm losing my mind. It's definitely.
There's another way to check it, and that for whatever reason, if it doesn't want to set the code,
No, it's disconnected. It's definitely.
Yeah, the other way you can check to verify is in the tool when you go to data logging, you can go to intake air temperature and check the value.
All right. Well, I'm gonna do this, and I just closed out.
It's a bit strange that there's no code for it, but it could be that because we were trying to do that other flash, the file we flashed. I might have disabled something. But I don't think so. I don't think it's disabled for that code, but it might be. That particular ROM, it could be disabled since your car's already been flashed.
No code.
Yeah, I think it's that particular one. I may have disabled it because we were messing around with that ROM. Remember when we were flashing it before?
Yeah.
Go to data logging and go to live data.
Data logging.
What it says for intake air temperature.
Data logging, and then I have start.
Scroll in that menu, you should see intake air temperature.
Intake air temperature says 79 degrees Fahrenheit.
Alright, go and plug the other sensor and see if that value changes to something that doesn't make any sense.
So leave the car on?
You can leave it on if you want to. All you're doing is a braking circuit. You're just going to unplug it.
I don't know why I'm sitting the phone down. It's Bluetooth.
Yeah, you can take the phone with you.
Be easier.
So watch the value and see when you pull the connector off, see if that intake air temperature value changes or goes to 0 or something.
Well, it might not because of the fact that, well, actually it should, right?
It should because you're pulling the sensor. If it's reading the value and you're unplugging it, then, it should change.
Yeah, well, we'll find out. Hopefully.
If it doesn't, you got something else going on.
I can't see. There we go. All right. Yeah, there we go. Intake temperature -49.
Okay, well there you go. So, sometimes, you know, you can be in a situation where there's so much airflow going through those maps that the stock ECU, it's just not, the way it's designed, it's just not going to, you know, it's not going to be happy. It's going to set up with your code. So there's a standard practice for going through and disabling some half codes. Not all of them, but, you know, I might have clicked on one of the other ones. If there's a circuit issue, you know, we probably don't want that disabled. But if there's something like excessive flow or something like that, those are the type of codes you want to, you know, you typically on force reduction or you would disable those.
All right, so I just want to show you guys, we do have the fact that it is in fact the temperature is being read off the passenger side, but you want to verify just to make sure. Don't just assume that that's where it comes from in case your car might be kind of squirrely and have it set up differently. So the next thing I got to do is run this cable connection for the mass airflow and that. Eugene, I'm going to call you back here in a little bit. I just wanted thank you for walking me through that, and we'll get back to you in a minute. As you can see from the screen as well, I have the temp. You can see how it's the -49 right there. So that's where we're getting that reading from. So just wanted to show you. All right, I'll call you back in a little bit. So basically the harness, one end, which I can show pictures of, one end goes into your stock. The other end goes into the harness, which is underneath here, which is right here. So that's plugged in. Then I ran it along the original line. Mind you, this is only temporary. Once the actual solid harness is being made, I just have to give him the measurements, because this one is about 7 inches too long, because I overestimated. Let me show you. So then it goes back behind, and I kind of zip tied it in there with, that's the excess right there. So then it goes underneath. So yeah, everything's hooked up, everything's ready. So now we can start tuning the car. Probably maybe tomorrow or the next day. Probably gonna start tuning it hopefully this week. It just depends on, one, the weather. Two, I also got to keep up with my college, my work, household. It's a lot of stuff that I juggle, so please bear with me if I don't post right away. I also have today's video that I gotta post, which it's already 10:30 at night right now, and I have to be up at work at 6 in the morning. So I'm not gonna have time to edit this tonight before I go to bed and post this. So I'll have to do it Monday, which means I won't be able to easily start tuning it Monday, because I'd rather have this posted and then, you know, for you guys. So I know you want to see everything, but that's why. So thank you. Please don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, check out what other YouTube video it recommends to you. And if you have any questions about this sensor or anything like that, please comment below your questions and I'll make sure they get answered. Bye.